Today we see Jesus' declarations in the gospel of the Beatitudes. We've come to know them as the Beatitudes. The word beatitude is not a common word we use in our everyday conversations, but it depicts well what Jesus is trying to say is important. Beatitude can be translated bliss, happiness, and we find that rather strange, don't we? That happy are those who are poor, who mourn, who are suffering, who are thirsty, who are hungry. It's contradiction in the world. But when we really think about it, we see that what Jesus is saying is that we cannot rely upon material things. We have to rely upon the Lord. The first beatitude, blessed are the poor in spirit, means that we rely completely upon God and we trust that He will help us in all of our needs. The world would say that's crazy. It doesn't work. But we can look at the history of the church and we can see hundreds of saints who lived by these Beatitudes, and they did work for them. St. Paul tells us in the first reading that he encourages us in our every affliction. And he says that the sufferings of Christ overflow to us, which I find a very interesting statement to meditate upon. Jesus came into the world and he suffered a terrible death on the cross because of his love for us, so that our sins could be forgiven. And his suffering overflows to us. And so if we are poor in spirit, we're not going to rely upon material things, but upon God. And that will bring us happiness. Blessed are those who mourn. Often use that phrase in a funeral homily and say, blessed are you who mourn, because you love. Mourning only comes from somebody who loves. And love is the greatest gift that we have. Love God for us and our love for God and each other. And really all of the Beatitudes, and I read some time ago that someone called them the Beatitudes. And I think that's a good statement, the Beatitudes. That if we are bringing comfort to the sorrowing, and if we are bringing comfort to those who mourn, if we're seeking if we're hunger for righteousness, meaning like Jesus did on the cross, that he hungered for the souls he came to save, that brings us happiness. And isn't it true, when we are giving of ourselves, there's some personal sacrifice. But when we do, there's a certain kind of happiness that comes from knowing that we're imitating Christ in our day-to-day life. And so we thank the Lord for these words of his today, and we ask him to give us the help to live the Beatitudes out in our everyday life by the attitudes that we have toward God and others. Let us stand and offer our prayers and petitions.